Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the second part of my gear guide video. Don't forget to check out my first part, which is all of my outerwear. I'll link it up here. And today's video is going to be all of the hard goods that I use. So my board, my boots, and my bindings. Let's get to it. I use predominantly the Burton SLX. This guy here is one of their top of the line marquee boots, and it's really good for a couple of reasons. The first is it's super lightweight, so again, less fatiguing overall, especially when you're in them all day long. And the other nice thing that I really like about them is that mid-range flexibility. Not super stiff, not super soft. You still have enough range of motion that it's forgiving when you're in tight technical terrain like the trees, but it's also firm enough that you get the performance that you're looking for when you're doing steeper stuff or shoots. Another really nice thing about this boot is the big Vibram sole that's on the bottom. That Vibram sole is really good for hiking and for anti-slip. So you get all of that traction that you need when you're going up areas like Spanky's Ladder, but you're also making sure that this boot's not going to slide around on you too much if you're in icy conditions, walking through the village, let's say. Plus, there's also a B3 dampening gel in the base of the boot, which helps to mitigate the amount of vibration that's traveling up your leg. So it's easier on the knees. Finally, guys, I'll talk about the inner liner in here. Super nice, primo inner liner. It's their Life liner, which is their highest end moldability factor. This liner really does mold and conform beautifully to your feet. It's also very warm, and there's also an anti-stink factor to the boots. They've designed it so that it's antimicrobial and less likely to, build up bacteria, sweat, that grossness that you experience out of boots. Another quick thing that I'll say about these boots is that the enclosure system that they use is built with a New England rope. New England rope is the same kind of rope that they use for high-end parachutes, for example. Less likely that they're going to fray. They're super durable. Next up are my bindings. These are the Now Drives. I really like the Now Binding brand. They're designed specifically here in BC by JF Pelchat. He's one of the original Wildcats and has always been a local Whistlerite. These bindings are unique in the sense that they utilize a specific technology that no other brand uses, and that's Skate Tech technology. Skate Tech technology is this moving hanger that actually sits where the disc of the binding would sit here in the middle. And what it does is it emulates the way that skateboard trucks feel. So just like when you lean in on a skateboard and you get that turning initiation, this technology helps the binding to initiate a turn and really deliver the pressure directly to your edges when you're snowboarding. I use the Drive because it's a firmer, more freeride inspired binding. It's like an 8 out of 10 flex, and this is actually the binding that Jeremy Jones used to use and call his pro model before he started his own brand of bindings that also utilizes Skate Tech technology. So in case you guys didn't know, Jones Snowboards also makes a line of bindings. Jeremy Jones owns a 20% stake in Now Bindings, and that's why they both use Skate Tech. I really like the Skate Tech technology because, like I said, it really helps you to initiate a turn. It also helps when you're on cat tracks, for example, where you're riding a flat section. It does all of those slight micro adjustments for you so that you're not constantly trying to pivot back and forth from one edge to the other. This particular binding also feels super solid. I've had people compare it almost to like feeling a catcher's mitt on their boot. Feels super secure. They're using a one-piece synthetic injection molded ankle strap, and their toe cap sits at a 45-degree angle, keeping your toe in nice and secure. Another cool thing, guys, is that in both of the buckle mechanisms, they're using a magnesium component. So you get that lightweight factor, which equates to more performance. The high back on this binding is automatically canted 10 degrees so that it fits a little bit better with that freestyle shaping, and yeah, it just aligns really nicely with the edge of the snowboard. Next up, we've got my daily driver, the Libtech Travis Rice Orca. This is Travis Rice's freeride snowboard, and I would say this is a fantastic daily driver for Whistler conditions. It's freeride inspired, it's definitely set back, and it excels in both carving and powder conditions. So if you're just railing this thing for some hard turns on a groomered morning, it still holds a great edge, and it floats really nicely when you're in powder snow or in soft snow because it's set back just slightly. What I really like about this snowboard is its hybrid rocker camber shape. There's a slight amount of rocker between the feet that really helps the board initiate a turn and feel agile when you're going in between trees, for example. But then underneath your binding insert, going all the way out to the tip and the tail, are cambered zones. And those cambered zones give you really good stability and really good pop. And they also help you feel more locked in when you're landing a jump. So you got a really good versatile package here that's both capable of riding icy, hard pack conditions if you're just doing some carving groomer laps, and it's also a great board for powder conditions. If you get that powder morning, that setback really helps you float. Same thing with that rocker between the feet, helps you really get back onto that rear foot and get that board to plane out. A lot of people have been asking me if I can feel a difference between this year's version of the Orca and last year's version of the Orca. This year they upgraded the entire package to a horsepower construction, which means that they've now added basalt into the overall construction of the board. To tell you the truth, guys, I really don't feel a huge difference between the previous iterations of this snowboard. But one of the things that I am noticing is that it feels a little bit more durable. So definitely not noticing any delaminations so far, haven't had any major chips. The board just feels really solid underfoot, and I've actually ridden it over a bunch of rocks, roots, tree branches, and overall debris. One of the really cool technologies on this snowboard is the serrated edge. They call it magnetraction, but you can see it when you look at it. It's this undulating flow to the sidewall of the snowboard. And what that does is it creates more contact points. So on a normal or traditional snowboard, you've got contact points in the tip and the tail. By adding that slight undulation, it's almost like adding a serradation to the board. It's like a butter knife versus a steak knife. A steak knife is far more likely to grip and to cut in versus a butter knife. So you don't really feel it when you're on soft snow or in powder snow, but you definitely feel that technology working for you when you're on icy hard pack conditions. Another thing that I always like to talk about on the Travis Rice Orca is that fairly accentuated cambered zone, especially under the rear foot. They call it whale tail technology, and you can see that it abruptly moves into a flat zone in the tail. It's really nice because when you're in powder snow, that tail really helps to whip around and kick you into your next turn, so it delivers a lot of pop. And the other cool thing is that when you're just in soft snow in general, you can really steer the board off of your back foot. So you can really lean back and pretty much maneuver the entirety of the board off of the rear section here. So great for that rear-footed style that I have. Another great thing about the Libtech made boards is they're Mervin manufactured. So this board was still shaped and put together by real people. They're not made by machine. It's handcrafted. So if the Orca is my daily driver for every condition, I also have a few different boards that move more specifically into a surf-inspired shape or a more powder-inspired shape. Next up is my Jones Mind Expander. This thing is super special because it's been in part designed by Chris Christensen, who is a professional surf shaper. The benefit of the snowboard is that it has a surf-inspired shape, so it feels incredibly agile, incredibly turnable when you're in trees. Unlike the Orca that has cambered zones, this board is flat through the inserts and then moves to a giant rockered shovel in the front. Basically, that flat zone makes the board very surfy feeling. It's less likely to catch an edge. It's really easy to initiate a turn, and it feels incredibly agile when you're in powder scenarios. So you get a little bit more float out of this guy. It's a little bit more surf inspired. It doesn't feel as locked in as the Orca. It's not as good of a carving board, but it definitely excels in powder conditions, and it's one of my favorites for riding the trees. One of the cool things about the Mind Expander is that it actually utilizes a spoon technology in the shovel. So the board is slightly beveled, which creates the same effect as a boat hull. The nice thing about this technology is that it really helps the board initiate a turn, and it also helps to mitigate the turbulence. So if you're going through really bumpy conditions, this board will help transition through those. Now we've talked about the boards that I've used more frequently, and we're going to move into my creme de la creme, my absolute favorite board. This is my most cherished snowboard, and it's the one that I brought back as a souvenir from Japan. This is my most treasured possession, the Gentemstick Superfish. This is the board that I only bring out for super pristine conditions once we've had 20 centimeters or more of fresh snow. This thing is designed for Japanese powder. You can see it's got a massive swallowtail on the back end, and that makes this board incredibly specific for powder conditions. So not a board that you'd want to ride on hardpack or on groomers, but definitely when we get that deeper snow, those powder conditions, this thing is a dream to ride on. The swallowtail makes the board incredibly easy to get it to float. So the tail always sinks, and that shovel that's incredibly long always floats and planes out of the snow. So this board is almost unsinkable. You can see when you look at the actual inserts here, there's almost no tail past that back insert. So there's very little space that actually has any surface area behind your back foot, and that makes for a board that's incredibly easy to get to plane out and to steer. So when you're riding this thing through tight conditions, you simply lean back on that swallowtail. It's a nice and pliable, flexible tail, and the front end or the front shovel just pops right up, and it's super easy to make that board conform into any turn shape that you're looking to make. So this board is phenomenal for tree runs. This board is also very, very sharky feeling. It makes those quick, fast, sharp, dynamic turns in the powder and looks incredibly stylistic. So definitely one of my absolute favorite boards to own, and I actually almost feel guilty about using it because I want to maintain its pristine condition as long as possible. This board is shaped by Taro Tamai. He's one of the most famous surf-inspired snowboarders out of Japan, and this board is just super indicative to that fun, agile powder shaping. So a little bit more boutique-y, you know, not as likely to see this kind of shape every day, but when you encounter this thing in powder, it really is, you know, an endless flotation device. It's super fun. Another thing that you'll notice about the shape of this board is that it's super tapered. That means that the front end of the board is much, much wider than the tail. That basically gives the board a characteristic of feeling incredibly turnable. I don't know if you guys have ever ridden a pintail skateboard before, but it almost feels like super twitchy and easy to bring into a turn. And that's exactly how this swallowtail feels in the deeper powder. Really twitchy, really easy to initiate, and yeah, great for bringing around in tight trees. When you buy a Gentemstick board, these things are super premium. They are super high-end. It's got one of the best bases that you could buy on the market, and it's also incredibly lightweight for how wide it is. This thing did not end up being cheap. I almost don't want to say how much I spent on it on camera, but yeah, let's just say it's a cherished item of mine, and it sits on my wall when I'm not riding it. So, yeah. Pretty awesome. Last but not least, this is how I film all of my adventures. I use the GoPro Hero 9. Instead of using a selfie stick, actually use this black diamond collapsible pole. These poles are designed for touring and for hikeability, but the nice thing about keeping a pole on you is that it's great for transitioning over flat sections, and you can use it as a selfie stick. So when I'm not using it, I keep it in its unfolded position. It goes easily into a backpack or just easy to hold. And then you simply put it into its full position here. And it's nice because you can actually choose here what length to bring it out to. So you have a little bit of customization. So the black diamond collapsible pole works really well as a selfie stick. It's lightweight, and it's just great as a tool for when I'm, trying to get through a flat zone, trying to gain some speed. Just nice on a powder morning to give you some traction. The GoPro 9 is my favorite camera to use, basically because of its hyper smooth technology. This camera is incredibly smooth. There's very little vibration when you're watching the footage back. All of the stabilization happens in-house in the camera so that you're not having to worry about image stabilization in the editing process. So everything ends up looking really smooth, really concise. It's almost like having a gimbal without using a gimbal. So gimbal quality footage, incredibly stable. All right, guys, that's it. That's all. That's my daily driver equipment. Everything that I use while I'm on the mountain that makes my riding style as unique as it is. I hope that you found that educational. And if you're looking to buy any of the equipment that I've shown off tonight, then I've provided links in the description for all of this stuff so you can check it out yourselves. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Every like does help the channel and helps me to continue producing the content that you like to watch. So thank you so much for tuning in, and don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. We'll see you on the mountains.